Good afternoon. My name is Ronnie Houchin, and I'm the Associate Director in the Center for Student Engagement at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. Thank you for joining us for our first UAF-wide 3-minute thesis competition. As we begin, I want to acknowledge the Alaska Native nations upon whose ancestral lands our campuses reside. In Fairbanks, our Trathyadah campus is located on the ancestral lands of the Dana people of the lower Tanana River. The 3-minute thesis is an international competition that celebrates the exciting research and scholarship conducted by graduate students around the world. Developed by the University of Queensland, the competition allows students to share their work with a broad audience. 3MT promotes students' academic and professional communication skills and increases students' capacity to explain their scholarship while engaging and hopefully entertaining a general audience. All of this with their personal experience in just one PowerPoint slide. This year's 3-minute thesis competition couldn't have happened without the UAF Graduate School. And here to tell us a little bit more about the competition is the director of the graduate school, Rich Collins. And it wouldn't be a Zoom thing without having to tell someone that they were muted. So Rich, apologies, you are muted.
Thanks, Ronnie. Thanks for being our 3MT Master of Ceremonies today. One of the great things about 3MT is that our UF students get to reflect on their work and decide what's most important. Our students tell us that this reflection allows them to refine and focus their scholarship going forward, and we think that's a huge benefit to them. It also allows the UAF community to share that scholarship with the Fairbanks, Alaskan, and global communities, including proud family members and friends. On behalf of the graduate school, I would like to express our thanks to the many people who've made this event possible. Thanks to Teresa Bacher and the UAF Alumni Association for their general support. Thanks to Mark Billingsley and Peter Webley of the Center for Innovation, Commercialization and Entrepreneurship for their support. And thanks to the graduate school staff, Shelley Bowman, Felicia Baroud, and Erin Kirshner, who embraced this idea last summer and have navigated all the bobs and weaves along the way. Thanks also to Amy May, Rob Prince, and Nani Noyan with the UAF Speaking Center for hosting a series of 3MT presentation workshops for students this semester and working with some of our finalists even this past week. Thanks also to the UAF faculty and staff members who served as judges in the preliminary heats and selected the students for the finals today. But most of all, thank you to our UAF graduate students. To all our students who have participated in the 3MT heats, I want to say the judges were very impressed with the quality of your presentations. They recognized the expertise, courage, time, and effort you brought to the competition. They were very impressed by the strength of your presentations in a first-time competition. We at the graduate school could not be prouder of you. Thank you very much. Ronnie, back to you to introduce our judges for today's finals.
Thanks, Rich. We've got a great panel of judges here with us today. And first up is Gary Black, the features editor at the Fairbanks Daily News Miner. Gary Black is managing editor of the Fairbanks Daily News Miner and a 16-year resident of Fairbanks. He's a lifelong reporter, writer, editor, and photographer, working in both print and radio throughout his career, which started in his high school newspaper in Texas way back in the late 1980s. Gary, you must have been, what, 3, 4 at the time? Thanks for being here, Gary, too. Next up, I'd like to introduce John Davies, UA Regent. John has been associated with the University of Alaska, directly or indirectly, for most of the 54 years since he came to Fairbanks in 1967. He was a graduate student at the UAF Geophysical Institute, and later, as the state's first state seismologist, helped to create the Alaska Earthquake Center and the Alaska Volcano Observatory. John has served in the state legislature, on the Fairbanks North Star Borough Assembly, and is now in his 7th year on the UA Board of Regents. Thanks for being here, Regent Davies. Now I'd like to introduce Jen Imus, Interior Relationship Manager for First National Bank, Alaska. Jen is a UAF alum, having earned her MBA in capital markets in 2003. She has over 20 years of experience in business and commercial banking and enjoys maintaining her connection with the College of Business and Security Management through the annual Etiquette Seminar and Business Leader of the Year event. Jen is generous with her time and serves on several boards throughout the Fairbanks area, including the Greater Fairbanks Chamber of Commerce and the University of Alaska Museum of the North Advisory Board. Thanks for being here, Jen. Next up, Jerry Simon, Corporate Compliance and Risk Officer at the Tanana Chiefs Corporation. Jerry Simon is the Compliance and Risk Officer for TCC. Jerry started her college career at the University of Alaska Fairbanks and went on to earn a bachelor's degree from the University of Washington and a law degree from Seattle University. Before joining TCC, Jerry worked with various organizations around the state, including Doi Unlimited, Tyonek Native Corporation, Yukon-Kuskokwim Health Corporation, Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium, and the Alaska Federation of Natives. Jerry serves as a board member for her village corporation of Koyatlasina Limited, as a council member of the Alaska Judicial Council, and on the boards of the Fairbanks Economic Development Corporation, the UAF Chancellor's Advisory Board, the UA System Steering Committee for the Alaska Native Success Initiative, and the American Heart Association. Originally from Allakaket, Jerry and her son Keel call Fairbanks home. Thanks for being here, Jerry.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Cindy Wright, UAF Alumni Association President. Cindy Wright is a 1988 UAF graduate, earning a bachelor's degree in education. Wright has been a resident of Alaska since 1972 and has enjoyed living in Fairbanks since 1983. Wright is currently serving as the UAF Alumni Board President, and her paid job includes working as the Fairbanks Wellness Coalition Coordinator for the Interior Alaska Center for Nonviolent Living. Cindy has enjoyed 32 years of blissful marriage to her husband, Bill, and they share in the joys of parenting their 4 children. Thanks for being here, Cindy. And thanks again to all of our judges. In addition to the first, second, and third place awards presented by our panel of judges, we also have a People's Choice Award and the Center Ice Award and the UAF Alumni Association Award. So viewers on Facebook and here in the Zoom, keep an eye out in the event chat for the People's Choice Award. And stay tuned later to hear about the Alumni's Choice Award and the Center Ice Award. The preliminary round of our competition took place last Thursday. And from that, today's competition will feature finalists from the College of Engineering and Mines, the College of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences, the College of Liberal Arts, and the College of Natural Science and Mathematics. So without further ado, let's get into the competition and hear from our finalists and see their presentations. First up is Kelsey Frazier from the College of Engineering and Mines. Kelsey, your slide is up on the screen, and as soon as you're ready, your timer will begin.
The Arctic is a region of our planet that is changing rapidly, more rapidly than other places. The Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the global average, which is causing a thinning of sea ice. This thinning of sea ice is ushering in a new era for transglobal shipping. Between 2013 and 2019, there was a 25% increase in the number of cargo ships alone traveling through the Arctic. Not only were there more ships, but they're carrying more cargo than ever before and traveling longer distances. This increase in traffic, however, is causing great concern. Why should we be worried about more traffic in the Arctic? The problem is when there's an accident. Ships are powered by fuel oil, and an unintentional release could put thousands of gallons of oil into the water. That oil then forms an oil slick, a thick, sticky coating at the surface of the water. In the Arctic, that oil slick can migrate beneath the sea ice, and once it's there, we don't know where it's going. In fact, if an oil spill were to happen today anywhere in the Arctic, there's not one operational oil spill model that can tell us how an oil slick would behave under the ice. My work helps the scientific community understand how an oil slick would migrate beneath sea ice. See, in the open ocean, sea ice isn't flat on the bottom. It's actually jagged and full of nooks and crannies. So an oil slick might stay in one spot where the ice is more rough, or it might be carried away where the ice is more smooth. It is critical then for us to understand where the ice is rough and where the ice is smooth to better predict slick motion. But for decades, the scientific community has thought if we can't see directly beneath the ice, then we can't tell how rough that ice is. Analyzing data and using statistics, I've come up with a new way to predict what the roughness of the sea ice is underneath just by looking at the top. It turns out that when I group sea ice data by ice stage, which is how we describe the top surface, the under ice roughness presented unique and predictable patterns. Figuring out those patterns means that I can now predict where the ice is rough and where it's smooth, and more importantly, build computer models of those surfaces. And that's just what I've done. I've constructed computer models to better explore how an oil slick will move along these surfaces. 3 examples of my work are presented on the slide before you. This research, it's transformational for oil spill motion and understanding where oil will spread to. We hope that in the future, this work will allow first responders and agencies to ensure that an oil spill doesn't harm our communities and coastlines.
Thank you, Kelsey. So now, judges, take a few moments to complete your notes on Kelsey's presentation. And while you're doing that, I'd like to highlight the engineering open house taking place this Saturday, February 26th, from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Discover the world of engineering with students from the College of Engineering and Mines at this open house. Fun engineering-themed activities for the entire family, plus food, prizes, and more. The event will take place in the Duckering Building and the Engineering Learning and Innovation Facility. Please remember that masks are required on campus and there's free parking on the weekends. Parking is not enforced on campus on the weekends. So come on out to the Engineering Open House this weekend, again, Saturday from 11 to 3 p.m. in the Engineering Learning and Innovation Facility and the Duckering Building on campus. Judges, I'm just sort of keeping an eye on you to see how you're doing with your notes. And it's looking like most of you are finishing up. And yeah, while the judges are wrapping up your notes, we'll key up the next presenter, Josiane Haig, in the College of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences. Judges, if you could just give like a thumbs up if you're ready for us to move on, that would be great. Great, it looks like we're ready. So Josiane, your timer will start as soon as you begin speaking.
Okay, hi, so by the end of my presentation, oh wait. Okay, hi, so by the end of my presentation, I hope that I can convince you all that groundwater is important. So to start, we're gonna go backwards or forward a little bit in the story. So you owe every second breath of oxygen you take to phytoplankton, the tiny plants that drift along with ocean currents and occupy the bottom of marine food webs. A taxon of phytoplankton, diatoms, which you can see in the middle picture on the right, they produce 20% of the oxygen on Earth each year. They also absorb the equivalent amount of carbon dioxide that's produced or captured annually by the world's rainforests. These organisms play a huge role in making Earth habitable. But under the right circumstances, they can turn on us. So just like a nice gremlin that turns less nice when it gets wet, diatoms get angry when they're stressed. They can produce a neurotoxin called domoic acid that causes amnesic shellfish poisoning, which results in nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea, and in extreme cases, seizures, coma, irreversible memory loss, and death. And I've also put fish kills and sea lions attack on the slide, and those are more ecosystem issues, not human issues. So under the right but there are many factors that can incite the production of domoic acid, one of which is a nutrient limitation. So just because the diatom is present doesn't mean that it'll produce toxins, but when nutrients aren't present or not present in the right amounts, it will. So therefore, quantifying the flux of nutrients to the near shore and how it can change throughout the year is important in predicting when domoic acid can be produced. So a major source of nutrients comes from groundwater. It's difficult to measure, so many environmental assessments ignore it. but the flux of groundwater to the oceans is 3 to 4 times greater than rivers globally, and it supplies the ocean with more nutrients than rivers in many local studies. Alaska is potentially some of the greatest fluxes of groundwater on Earth because of its steep topography, high precipitation, permeable sediment, and large tidal range. So you can see in the top right figure that when the water column's high, so at high tide, we're not really seeing as much groundwater signal because the water is being pushed in as the tide goes in. But as the tide comes out, it pulls out water enriched in nutrients, groundwater. So previous research suggests that groundwater rivals rivers as a source of nutrients along the northern Gulf of Alaska. So my research seeks to quantify the nutrients coming from groundwater in a bay with shellfish farming. Many Alaskan Native villages rely on bivalve subsistence harvest, so they're directly affected by the production of domoic acid, which can accumulate in shellfish. Directly understanding the relative concentration of nutrients affects the frequency of these phytoplankton blooms, which can have disastrous repercussions on human health. Quantifying the extent to which groundwater can supply the nearshore with nutrients is the first step in predicting the presence of domoic acid producing diatoms. So thank you to everyone for listening, and also thank you to Kyle Dillaplane, who provided the diatom photos.
Thank you, Josie-Ann, for your presentation. Judges, please take a few moments to jot down your notes about Kelsey's presentation. And while you're doing that, I just want to remind folks here watching that Interim President Pat Pitney will be giving the 2022 State of the University Address on March 3rd at noon. This address is presented through the Juneau Chamber of Commerce and is supported in part by the University of Alaska Foundation. The address will be live streamed at alaska.edu/pres, PRES/SOU. That link is there on the slide. It's been a challenging few years for the university, and I'm excited to learn about President Pitney's vision for the university and to learn more about just all the amazing things that are happening across our entire university here at the University of Alaska. And while the judges are completing your notes, I happen to be a big fan of UAF trivia. And so I'm going to ask just a couple of trivia questions. Feel free to, if you think you know the answer, type it in the chat. But one of my favorite pieces of UAF trivia is that an airplane once crashed into one of the buildings on campus. If you think you know the name, go ahead and type it in the chat. One of the funny things about this is that the building is named after an aviator, and no one was injured or hurt in that crash. But I believe the student who crashed was able to walk away just fine. But if you know the answer, go ahead and type it in into the chat. Oh, the chat online on Facebook. I do see in the Q&A that chat is disabled. So I apologize for the folks who are joining us here in the actual webinar. But if you're joining us on Facebook, you should be able to live chat there. And just to keep us moving, the answer is the Eielson building. And Marmion did put a note in that Zoom participants, you should be able to chat now. Thank you for doing that, Marmion. So judges, it's looking like you have completed your notes, and maybe we're ready to move on to the next presenter. Next up from the College of Natural Science and Mathematics is David Polizzinski. And David, your time will start as soon as you start speaking.
What does it mean for solid ice to have a velocity? Every morning when we get in our cars to drive into work, we all know the moving vehicle has a velocity, but what about that thick layer of ice covering the roadways we're driving on now? That ice hasn't moved since it froze there in late December, and most of us would agree that it can't leave fast enough. However, there are plenty of places throughout the world where solid ice does in fact have a velocity, such as on glaciers and ice sheets. Understanding glacial velocities today, how they have changed in the past, and how they are going to evolve in the future as Earth's climate warms are all critically important questions. Glacial ice moves due to two key processes seen in the upper left-hand figure here. First, the ice viscously deforms under its own weight due to the force of gravity. The ice flows more quickly at the surface and its velocity decreases with depth due to the friction at the bed of the glacier. Ice deformation happens relatively slowly, so instead you might imagine pouring honey down a slide at your neighborhood playground for an analogous viscous process. The second mechanism is simply known as basal motion, meaning the rate at which the ice slides downhill over its own bed. The total ice velocity, which you would then measure standing on the surface of a glacier, is the sum of the deformation rates and basal motion. For my thesis, we are interested in measuring the total surface velocity of the Athabasca Glacier in Canada, observing how quickly the ice column deforms through time, and thus estimating the fraction of total velocity which is due to basal motion under the glacier. To do this, we are repeating a borehole study which was conducted on Athabasca in the late 1960s. You drill an initially vertical borehole from the surface to the bed of the glacier. As the ice deforms at different rates with depths, instruments deployed in this borehole measure the 3-axis tilt and thus record the deformation of the ice throughout the glacier. This data, used in conjunction with GPS surface velocity measurements, will allow us to estimate modern-day basal motion. As we wait to collect this field data, numerical modeling allows us to gain early insights as to how ice flow on Athabasca has likely changed from the 1960s to the present day. As seen on the lower right, our measured ice thickness data has shown the glacier has thinned by approximately 50 meters over this time, and our modeling work indicates that velocity due to basal motion has likely decreased by approximately 50%. Understanding the dynamics of how ice velocities on Athabasca Glacier are changing will hopefully improve our knowledge of how glacial systems respond to climate change into the future.
Thank you, David. Once again, judges, please take a few moments to complete your notes on David's presentation. And while you're doing that, I'd like to highlight Dark Winter Nights, True Stories from Alaska is returning to the stage for the first time in 2 years this Saturday, February 26th at 7 p.m. in Lathrop High School's Herring Auditorium. Created and hosted by UAF professor Rob Prince, this is the first show since the New York Times called Dark Winter Nights, the best winter podcast for storytelling lovers. Stories from the show have aired nationally on NPR's Weekend Edition, and the podcast was featured in the November issue of Alaska Magazine. You can purchase your tickets online at darkwinternights.com. Again, Dark Winter Nights returning to the stage this Saturday, February 26th at 7 p.m. in Herring Auditorium. Judges, while you take a few moments to wrap up your notes, I've got another trivia question. UAF's first woman graduate earned her degree in 1924, and she went on to become a prominent nationalist and conservationist. And one of UAF's newest academic buildings is named after her. Who is she? If you think you know the answer, put it into the chat. Judges, it looks like many of you are wrapping up your comments on David's presentation. And I am seeing some correct answers coming into the chat. It was Margaret Murray, was UAF's first woman graduate way back in 1924. Just the second, I believe that was the second commencement that UAF had, even though we were founded in 1917, our first commencement wasn't until a few years later. All right, judges, thanks for taking a moment and wrapping up your notes. We'll now move on to our next presenter, Murader Rashidin from the College of Engineering and Mines. And Murader, as soon as you start speaking, your timer will start.
Hello, everyone. Most of us use toilet every day. We use the toilet, flush it, and get the job done. But do you know the story after that? Well, I'll tell you today. As soon as you flush the toilet, the sewage water travels to a nearby wastewater treatment facility where it goes through a series of treatment processes and eventually ends up in a lake or a river. During this process, bacteria is used to degrade organic matters in sewage and thereby clean the water. Like humans, this bacteria needs air to survive and do their job. But this air is continuously supplied through an aeration system. And here comes the use of electricity. Aeration uses the most energy in a wastewater treatment plant. Almost 1% of US electricity is used for aeration, which is equivalent to state of Alaska annual energy demand. So energy saving measures for aeration is a long-term burning issue. And that's where my research topic comes in. The major goal of my research is to answer the question whether we can run a wastewater treatment plant with intermittent aeration rather than using continuous aeration, but obviously not hampering the performance of the plant. On that hypothesis, we conducted a 12-month laboratory study of a bench scale bioreactor. First 2 months, we ran the reactor in continuous aeration mode and then changed the aeration pattern to 2 different aeration regimes. Firstly, 2-hour aeration on and 2-hour aeration off. And secondly, put 1-hour aeration on and 1-hour aeration off. The results are quite surprising. Despite varying the inlet organic concentrations, the outlet concentration remained almost the same. From the bar plot, we can see that the removal efficiency in continuous aeration was 68%, whereas the intermittent aeration condition like 2-hour on, 2-hour off, and 1-hour on and 1-hour off aeration regime had removal efficiency of 67% and 63% respectively. These results show that instead of using continuous aeration, intermittent aeration can be used in existing wastewater treatment facility. That means 50% of energy saving is possible in aeration without impacting the plant performance. While we are continuing to examine the impact of these intermittent aeration strategies on the other contaminants and microbial communities, these early results are very promising. These results have wide-ranging impact, not just in energy savings, but also in integration of renewable energy for wastewater treatment. That's my thesis in a nutshell. Thanks for all your time.
Thank you, Marauder. Judges, you know the drill. Take a few moments, jot down your notes on Marauder's presentation. And the Nanook Diversity and Action Center invites you to 2022 Black History Month festivities. This year, UAF's Black History Month celebration is dedicated to Bell Hooks and her legacy. Her work continues to inspire generations of artists, activists, and scholars across the globe. Black History Timeline is currently on display in the Wood Center, Arctic Java. The Nanook Diversity and Action Center is also compiling our UAF, Fairbanks, and broader Alaska communities' Black history and plans to expand this timeline through March 1st. That's an annual project collecting Black history from across Alaska, expanding that timeline every year. Again, that display will be up in Arctic Java in the Wood Center through March 1st. Got more trivia. Let's see, true or false? You got a 50-50 shot at this one. UAF is the only university in the world to own and operate a rocket range. I think that's true. I think it's false. You got a 50-50 shot. Type your answers into the chat, either on Facebook or here on Zoom, if you think you know the answer. And I am seeing some answers come in. And yes, in fact, it is true. We are the only university in the world to own and operate a rocket range. Poker Flats out near Chattanooga, and I understand this is a busy time of year for Poker Flats, with many scientists coming to town to launch rockets to study the aurora. So an exciting thing that I think UAF, only university in the world to own and operate a rocket range. So judges, take a few seconds and wrap up your notes, please. And our next presenter will be Lindsey Stadler from the College of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences. Lindsey, as soon as your slide is up and as soon as you're ready, start talking and we'll start your timer.
Awesome. What if I told you climate change is already happening right here, right now? High latitudes like Alaska are seeing magnified effects from climate change. Increasing temperatures are causing glaciers to melt faster, which is increasing freshwater flux into nearshore systems. Why do we care? This can have major effects on things like food source availability. ultimately having the potential to alter the nearshore food web as we know it. For example, more fresh water into the system may be linked to higher amounts of land-derived nutrients. And although both ocean and land-derived nutrients have been documented as being utilized by nearshore consumers, little is known about why and how much certain foods are being targeted. And studies have shown that nutrients from the ocean may be of higher nutritional value than land. This is the basis of my study, which aims to understand what food webs will look like as glaciers recede. I have chosen 5 high latitude sites that represent a gradient of glacially influenced watersheds. All within Ketchimek Bay of South Central Alaska, these sites range from 0 to 60% glacial cover. This way I can compare sites that have glacial runoff to sites with little to no glacial runoff. I'm analyzing 3 species of abundant nearshore fishes, which represent a combination of differing body shape, behavior, and resource use, and whose presence contribute to ecosystem resilience. I want to see if sites with higher glacier cover are linked with fish diets containing higher degrees of land-based nutrients. I'm analyzing both stomach contents, which give me a detailed snapshot of what fish have just eaten, and stable isotopes, which will give me an idea of what they've eaten and incorporated into their tissues over time. Here I've included a bar graph showing stomach content proportions averaged by site and month and simplified into 2 categories, ocean and land. Look at all that blue. It's obvious that food from the ocean makes up a large majority of these diets. But do you notice where the bits of green are showing up? Land-derived food is showing up at sites with little to no glacier cover. But just because they eat food from the land doesn't mean it's getting broken down and assimilated. And preliminary stable isotope data have shown that these sites with little or no glacier cover have a more ocean-based signature. So basically, it's complicated. These 2 methods are showing contrasting things, but my combined approach moving forward will help untangle this web, which is so important because we might be approaching a world without glaciers. And if we don't address these food webs, it could have implications for our ecosystems at large. I'm hoping to inform on how to protect this planet we call home in the face of the changing climate, because we only have one and the time to act is now.
Thank you, Lindsey. Busy weekend on campus. We've already talked about the engineering open house on Saturday, dark winter nights happening Saturday night, but our own Alaska Nanooks are also playing in a number of athletic events tonight, Friday night, and Saturday night. Women's basketball will take on St. Martin's University tonight at 5:15 p.m. In the Patty Center, and on Saturday, 1 p.m., they'll take on Western Oregon University. The men's basketball team will be playing St. Martin's University tonight at 7:30 p.m. And on Saturday, they'll take on Western Oregon University at 3:15 p.m. And then it's hockey week, and men's ice hockey has a couple of games this weekend. Friday at 7:07 versus Arizona State University, and they'll take on Arizona State once again on Saturday at 7:07 p.m. Again, lots to do related to the university this weekend. These athletics games reminds me of another piece of my favorite UAF trivia. I'm a big fan of Beyonce, and whenever I walk into this space on campus, I think about how I am walking on the same hallowed ground that Beyonce herself has walked upon. So if you think you know where on our own University of Alaska Fairbanks campus Beyonce has graced with her presence, go ahead and put that into the chat. And again, judges, thank you for taking such great notes on our presenters' presentations. Take just a few moments again and jot down your notes on Lindsey's presentation. I am seeing some guesses come into the chat on where you think Beyonce has been on campus. And the correct answer is, I mean, I don't know all of where she went, but Destiny's Child did perform in the Patty Gym, I believe in the late 90s. So if you guessed Patty Gym, you're correct. You know, maybe they went to the museum, maybe they went to Lars. I don't know, but I do know that they performed in the Patty Center, and every time I walk in the Patty Center, Of course, think about our incredible student athletes, but I also think about Beyonce. So judges, take a last few seconds to jot down your notes. And Mary Stow, you are up next. Mary is a student in the College of Liberal Arts. And Mary, as soon as your slide is up and as soon as you're ready, your time will start as soon as you start talking.
I want everyone to take a second and pause and look at the people on this Zoom call. For the most part, we look pretty different, but we're all human. And while anthropologists agree that all of us are descendants of earlier humans who left Africa thousands of years ago, the routes that our early ancestors took remain debated. One of the possible routes that they took was traveling east towards South Asia. Between when these first early humans reached the South Asian subcontinent and today, there's been a ton of population movement within the region, as well as population groups moving in and out of the region. This exchange of people, languages, and cultures has led to the South Asia that we know today, a region that is home to nearly 2 billion people and thousands of ethnic groups. But where a lot of these ethnic groups originally came from remains unknown or debated. So through my research, I wanted to investigate 2 of these ethnic groups in northeastern India, the Rong and the Cheek. The Cheek are originally thought to have come from Tibet, but the geographic origins of the Rong are a little less clear, and not a ton of research has been done on either of these ethnic groups. I wanted to discover more about their social cultural histories, as well as their migration histories, in order to gain a better understanding of how they fit into the bigger picture of the populating of the subcontinent. Instead of taking DNA samples, which not everyone likes and which can be costly, I used dental casts. I was able to do this because the size and shape of your teeth are controlled by genes in a similar manner to a lot of your other physical traits like hair color. For example, who here has the same hair color as one of your parents or grandparents? It makes sense that you share this physical trait with your family because you also share genes and DNA with your family. And even though you can't see those genes, you can see them expressed in physical traits like hair color and teeth. I took measurements from the cheek to the tongue, the buccal lingual side of the teeth, as well as the mesial middle to the distal end, as shown by the blue lines in the middle figure, because these measurements are accepted as genetic proxies. I then compared these measurements to other measurements I took from measurements taken from 7 other population groups from throughout South Asia. What I found was that the Rong and the Cheek appear more closely related to each other than to these other population groups. And what that means is that they likely have different origins in these groups, and they probably shared different migration histories. They also likely were not exchanging genetic material through mating, at least not frequently. And that makes sense because in the past, due to social cultural constraints like group affiliation, as well as geographic barriers, it wasn't common for you to mate with someone that grew up hundreds or thousands of miles away. In the future, hopefully more dental casts can be taken from South Asia as well as other parts of Asia so that we can continue to explore the relationships between these groups and their histories. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, for your presentation. This weekend on Saturday is Family Day at the Museum of the North, and the theme is Big Things. And the whale skeleton that was recently installed in the atrium of the Museum of the North is certainly a big thing. From mammoths to mountains, explore big things at the museum. Meet entomologists and discover how insects have big effects on the world. Add to a collaborative art wall. Try a scavenger hunt in the galleries. Pick up supplies for take-home activities and more. The activities are designed for all ages, though adult supervision is required. There's no admission for children 14 and under at Family Days. So again, Family Day at the Museum of the North this weekend, Saturday, February 26th, noon to 4 p.m. Lots of fun activities for the entire family. Check it out. Got a little bit more trivia for folks. The Alaska Agricultural College and School of Mines, the institution that would become UAF, was founded in 1917, but wouldn't welcome the first class of students until 1922. How many students started on that first day of classes way back in 1922? Go ahead and put your guesses into the chat if you think you know how many students started on that very first day. I'm seeing some answers coming in. Some of them are close. If you think you know how many students start on that first day, one of those students would go on to be UAF's very first graduate in 1923, John Shanley, who was also the first student body president at the Alaska Agricultural College and School of Mines. I'm seeing actually now a number of correct answers in the chat. And if you guessed 6, you were correct. 6 students started on that first day way back in 1922. And one of those students would go on to graduate that spring in 1923. So congratulations to all of you who guessed correctly. And judges, I see you're still taking some notes, so maybe I'll do another trivia question. This is another true or false. You've got a 50-50 shot. Alaska's largest gold exhibit is located on our Fairbanks campus. True or false? 50-50 shot. Those are pretty good odds. Do you think the state's largest gold exhibit is housed on campus? Give you a hint. You might be able to see it Saturday at Family Day at the Museum of the North. Maybe, if it is housed on campus. All right, judges, it looks like you've had enough time to jot down your notes. And so I will say, yep, it is true. Gave you a pretty good hint there. The state's largest gold exhibit is housed at the Museum of the North on campus. Take your family to the museum this Saturday to see it during Family Day. All right, our next presenter is Russ Lucht. I asked before this and I knew I would still get it wrong, Russ. I apologize. So Russ, as soon as your slide is up and you're ready to go, you can start speaking and your timer will begin as soon as you start talking.
Have you ever wondered about the future of the Arctic and the people that live here? What can we learn from our past? How have we adapted and changed? I'm Russ Lucht, and my goal is to write about an expedition of a young lieutenant, Henry Allen, who in 1885 traveled across all of Alaska. And that was just 2 decades after its purchase. Why is that important? It's important because he traveled among the Dene of Alaska's interior. Take a look at my map. The yellow line shows where his expedition passed through Dene language and people groups. The extent of the indigenous lands, the place names, and the people he encountered provides a rich tapestry for study from the North Pacific up to the Arctic Ocean and the Brooks Range and west to the Bering Sea. Analyzing the history along this route helps me answer my research questions. How was the expedition accomplished? What were its results and meaning, both for indigenous and non-indigenous people? And why does it matter? This is not just Allen's story. This is a story of the Dene people and how they received, cared for, and guided Allen. The story shows who the Dene were, how they lived prior to the arrival of outsiders, and why they adapted to ever-changing circumstances. I'm really excited about one source that is a centennial honoring Allen, and it was hosted by elders at the very location where their ancestors guided him across the Alaska Range. This is important because the event shows how the encounters here in Alaska are different than those between the Army and indigenous people in the American West. I've enjoyed integrating disciplines to achieve a diversity of perspectives and shed light on this complex narrative. I'd like to thank the scholars, mentors, and the indigenous communities for supporting my research, including Dene elders, such as Larry Jonathan of Tanacross, who guided and taught me about the Dene way, much like his ancestors did for Lieutenant Allen. Studying this expedition, both as a historian and an Army officer, has changed the way that I view how the Army interacts with indigenous groups. As I continue to serve, my research will impact military operations in native homelands of the Arctic. Treating others with dignity and respect is the foundation for strategy and policy and a blueprint for our future. I look forward to promoting cooperation here in the Arctic and showing how Allen's expedition established positive relationships between the Army and Indigenous people groups here in the Dene homeland. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. And thank you to all of our presenters who made it here to the finals of our 3-minute thesis competition. Judges, please now take a few minutes, complete your notes, rank the presentations that you saw here this afternoon. Just as a reminder, there is also the People's Choice Award that will be given this afternoon. That link will be placed into the chat shortly. Marmion just put it into the chat here in the Zoom webinar. It should be showing up on Facebook soon as well. So please take some time to complete that. If you're an attendee here, complete that People's Choice Award form. Commencement for the Troth campus will be held in person this year on Saturday, April 30th at the Carlson Center. 2 smaller student-centered ceremonies are planned and reservations are required. Visit the Graduate Services website for the time your college will participate, and be sure to RSVP your participation and request your guest tickets before the March 18th deadline. I'll also take a moment and promote that the ASUAF student government is currently accepting applications for our student commencement speakers this year. ASUF will be selecting 2 graduating students who are either fall 21 graduates or spring 22 graduates to speak, one at each of the commencement ceremonies. And those applications can be found at engage.uaf.edu and are due Monday, I believe. So get those applications in soon if you would like to be the student commencement speaker. All right, so while the judges are taking their time to deliberate, I'd like to invite on one of my favorite colleagues at the university, Amy May, director of the UAF Speaking Center. Hopefully, Amy, this isn't coming as a surprise, but we'd like to invite you on to talk to you a little bit about public speaking and the work that you do at the Speaking Center. So Amy, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much, Ronnie, for
Hi,
giving me
Amy.
the opportunity to share a little bit about the work we do at the UAF Public Speaking Center. We are a student resource center here on campus, and our mission is to empower student voices. We work one-on-one with students to help them master the art of public speaking and to grow their communication competency. And we do that by helping them come up with topics, work through outlines, do research, and then ultimately present their speeches. Not only do we work with our undergraduate students, we work with our graduate students who are preparing for events like this, 3MT, but also work with graduate students preparing to defend their thesis research and their dissertations. It was our absolute pleasure to partner with the graduate school and help our graduate students prepare for this 3MT competition. We not only facilitated a series of workshops, we had the pleasure of working one-on-one with so many of the graduate students who presented in the heats, but also who represented here today. And I speak for myself, but also Nani, who is on the call as well from the Speaking Center, when I say that this was perhaps one of the most rewarding experiences that I've had. And our graduate students are incredible. And the research that we are doing at UAF is so important. And it just blew me away. And I learned so much from this experience. So I'll be back next year. The center will be back next year. And we look forward to continuing to support all of the graduate students and the research that you do every single day on this campus to make it what it is. So thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. And Ronnie, you're killing it as the MC. Really enjoying all this trivia and learning a lot too. So thank you so so much. And thank you
Yeah.
to the judges and the panelists. And most importantly, thank you all the students for showing up and representing. Public speaking is by far one of the most anxiety producing things that we do. So just for the fact that you're here and you put so much work to be here, wow, I'm blown away. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Before you hop off, to anyone who is watching now, maybe thinking about wanting to compete in this competition in the future, what's some advice that you have how to prepare for something like this?
The greatest challenge, I had a chance to do 3MT. If you didn't get a chance, we did kind of a faculty kickoff event, and I have never created a presentation that was harder to kind of pin down. How do you condense your research into 3 minutes? And going through that process taught me a couple things. One, it taught me how important it is to have that elevator pitch and being able in just a few minutes to present your research in a really meaningful way. So it is perhaps one of the most challenging, but coming out on the other side of it, rewarding exercises that you can do. So to get started, the first thing I would do is really sit down and ask yourself, if I only had one sentence, or even a tweet to sort of condense my research story down, what would it be? And answering that question is a great starting point to being able to tell your research story in this 3-minute format. So being able to answer that critical question, what's the essence of my research? If you want to compete, coming through the workshop series, because we walk you through everything from content development to creating a really powerful slide, and then also being able to deliver it and connect and engage with your audience in a meaningful way. And then use the Speaking Center and every other resource you have in your departments to practice, 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 practice. Everyone here wants to see our graduate students succeed. Everyone wants to be able to see them compete in a meaningful way. And we are certainly here to support you through that process from start to finish. But having done it, it is such an incredible opportunity to tell your research story in a meaningful way. Thank you for that, Ronnie.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. And thank you for all your help and support for our graduate students. Really appreciate the work that you do in the Speaking Center and all that you do for all of our students, really. So yeah, thank you so much. I believe we also have time, maybe if there are some questions from the audience for any of our presenters who gave their 3-minute thesis talks this afternoon. If there are questions, please put those into the Q&A or the chat, and we will see if we can get our presenters to answer those questions. Lots of really great information presented this afternoon from our finalists, and we'd love to be able to open it up to them to answer any questions that any of you might have. Feel free again to send those into the Q&A or into the chat. Of course, with the amazing presentations we had this afternoon, the judges are still taking their time to deliberate on the first, second, and third place winners. So we've got, like I said, time to take any questions from any of our attendees for our panelists. We do have one from Liam. Liam is asking Mary, how tricky is it to obtain mandibles to measure?
I was actually super fortunate. My advisor's been going to South Asia for, I think, over a decade, and he's been collecting mandibles and maxillas. So we actually have thousands of dental casts in the Bunnell building right now.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Thanks for that question, Liam. And our provost, Anupma Prakash, asks, what would you do differently if you were able to participate in a 3-minute thesis competition again? So any of our panelists want to jump in and take that question from Provost Anupma Prakash.
I guess I can jump in again.
Mary.
I wasn't sure if I was going to do this competition for a bit, so I didn't get to attend all of the amazing meetings that the Speaking Center was putting on to help prepare contestants for this. So I think I probably should have made that decision a little bit earlier and then attended more of those meetings.
Thanks, Mary. Any other panelists have an answer? What would you do differently if you were to compete again?
So this is Russ. I think one of the things to do, I guess the inverse of the question is to rehearse it with your peers. We have a interdisciplinary PhD seminar group, and it's a great time for us to share our research and then get feedback from your peers. So that was critical for my preparation, and I would encourage any future participants to use that as well.
Thanks, Russ.
I'll jump in. This is Kelsey. The one thing that I regret about this competition is that we're not in person and we can't do it with a live audience. It is somewhat awkward to sit here and stare at a camera and pretend that I'm in front of you. So it's almost more nerve-wracking than being able to see someone's face and enjoy the energy and enthusiasm that we've got when you're in person. So if I were to do this again, I would hope that we're past some of the goings on in the universe so that we could all be, in the same location.
Yeah. Fingers crossed that next year we can hold this competition in person. I've given a number of presentations on Zoom in the past couple of years, and there's just something about presenting on Zoom. I'm more nervous than I am in person.
Yeah.
So I can empathize with that, Kelsey, for sure. Anyone else? What would you do differently if you were going to do this all over again?
Maybe I can jump in.
Yeah.
I think I'll simplify more, maybe reduce the number of data and make more simple presentation.
I see.
In this 3-minute time, it's really hard to focus on so many things, but maybe a few things and general things which can connect to the audiences more. That would be better. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm curious to know from our presenters this afternoon, what inspired you to do the research that you presented to us this afternoon? Anyone can jump in.
I guess I can pipe in. I was fortunate enough to be able to partake in some really cool undergraduate research in a related field during my undergraduate degree, which kind of pushed me in the direction of glaciology. So I would recommend to any undergrads out there that, if possible, get involved in research early on because it may inform your decisions later.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And UAF is one of the top institutions in the country for undergraduate research. There's so many opportunities for undergrads to get engaged with, really vital research and scholarship at UAF. So that's great. That's great advice. Any of our other panelists, what inspired you to undertake your research?
I'll jump in. So what inspired me was an absolute love for Alaska and all the magnificent places and the diversity of places and the people. And as I got to know it better, I became more and more fascinated with the past and then our path to the future. So it's a great place to do field work. And for me as a historian, getting out in it to the places I'm writing about and researching and meeting people who live there was very rewarding.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Russ. Anyone else? What inspired you to undertake the research that you presented this afternoon?
How about internships?
Yeah.
So some of the inspiration for this came from actually interning with BP when they were here in the state, and listening to some of the challenges that they had at a corporate level, some of the concerns and nuances that were going on, and that in turn led down the little rabbit hole of, well, what if and then suddenly, I live in the land of research, but that's not how I started my journey. I have degrees in engineering, and I'm studying sea ice. So tell me how that one worked. But it turns out that you can have fluid dynamics going on beneath the ice, and that is an engineering element. So yeah, there were some great internships, and I would highly encourage everyone to explore career opportunities and just see what sticks. You never know what you'll find.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And in my job on campus, I get to work with quite a number of undergrad students, and doing a number of different things, and finding those academic connections between the work that they do and the things that they're learning in class can be so powerful, and can really spark really great learning and really great scholarship. I think, internships, student jobs are really great ways, whether that's on campus, off campus, in the summer, whatever that looks like, getting some sort of work experience as an undergrad, as a grad student, really just deepens the learning that happens in the classroom, I believe. So yeah, thank you for sharing that experience, Kelsey. Appreciate it. All right, I'm hearing from my colleagues in the graduate school that the judges have completed their scoring, and that we are ready to move on to the awards. Before we do that, though, I do want to note that all of our presenters this afternoon, first of all, did an incredible job, and just want to give a round of applause to all of our presenters for being brave and presenting your research here to a really wide audience, here in this webinar and also on Facebook. And I also want to give you all kudos for coming in under 3 minutes. Each of you came in under 3 minutes and still managed to present your research in a really compelling, informative way. So without further ado, I believe we're ready to move on to announce our winners this afternoon.
Hi, Ronnie. This is Erin from the graduate school. We are actually just getting those names populated in our slide, and we will be ready in just a few moments.
Oh, thanks, Erin. Thanks for letting me know. I do want to point out as well that we've had more than 70 people watching today, between the folks here in the webinar and the folks online on Facebook. Really impressive audience for our very first 3-minute thesis competition at UAF. And again, just kudos to our presenters for doing this on Zoom. It's not easy to speak publicly, let alone when you can't see the reactions of the people you're talking to. Kelsey, you're asking that if this will be available later. I believe it is. If anyone from the graduate school could confirm that for me. We did record this as we started. Marmion is letting me know it is going to be available after this. And I believe the live stream on Facebook should be available there as well once this is over. And Marmion is letting me know that UAF will post it on YouTube as well. So your presentations will live on as long as the internet lives, no pressure. At least we're telling you that after the fact than before, right? Might have caused a little bit more nervousness and anxiety had we told you that before you started your presentations. But yeah, so if you have colleagues, classmates, friends, family who didn't get to join us, there will be opportunities for you to share your presentation with those folks afterwards. All right, so I think we're still working on populating the slides that we use for this with the names of our winners. So we might have time then for if there are any more questions from our audience for our presenters. Shelley, I see you have your hand up. Good use of the Zoom functions.
Yes, you're welcome. So if Thomas Ferrugia doesn't mind, he received his PhD here at UAF, if I remember correctly, and he went straight to the Falklands before it had even been conferred. Would you, Thomas, like to speak a few moments about your experience there and then coming back?
Thomas, I just promoted you to panelist if you would like to speak.
Hi, yeah. Can you hear me? Oh, let me turn my camera on. Oh, great. Yeah, I couldn't speak. I was furiously typing in the chat that there was no way for me to speak to answer back. But yeah, I did my PhD in 2017. I finished it. Well, I technically walked in May of 2017, but I didn't complete my actual dissertation. I didn't finalize it until December because I had gotten a job down in the Falkland Islands as a stock assessment scientist for Patagonian toothfish or Chilean sea bass down in the Falkland Islands. So I went down there and kind of finished the last corrections on my dissertation while I was working down there, and that was a great, really great experience, a really interesting part of the world, and was there for about 2.5 years, and then I actually came back up and worked in California for a bit, and then in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, came back to Alaska, to Anchorage, to work for the Alaska Ocean Observing System. So that's where I am now. But yeah, had a great time at UAF, did my PhD in the fisheries when it was still the School of Fisheries and Ocean Sciences before it became a college. And yeah, I recognize a lot of people on the call here, and good to see you all, and really, really happy to have seen this 3MT, which I don't think was around when I did my dissertation, but would have been really fun to do. So great job for all the participants today. It was really fun to watch.
Thanks, Thomas. I always am inspired by our graduates who really go off all over the world, continue their research, continue their scholarship, contribute to their fields. So thank you for being here and sharing a little bit about your post-UAF journey with all of us.
For sure.
Much appreciated. All right. Well, I think we're getting close to being able to award our awards for this year's first UAF-wide 3-minute thesis competition, surely the first of many more to come. And again, hopefully next year we'll be able to do this in person and see all of this live and be together to celebrate our researchers. All right, so I'm hearing that we are good to go with the awards presentation. And again, just a huge round of applause to all of our presenters this afternoon. You all did really amazing work, and you should all be very proud of your presentations and the work you put in to get to these finals. So drum roll, I suppose. I used to imagine it. I don't have a drum roll to play. Third place prize goes to Lindsey Stadler. Congratulations, Lindsey. With that third place prize comes a cash award of $250. So way to go. Our second place prize goes to Russ. And that second place prize comes with the $500 award. So congratulations, Russ, for your second place finish. And now for the big prize, first place goes to Kelsey Frazier. Congratulations, Kelsey. With that first place award comes $750. So congratulations again to Kelsey for winning our first place prize in our competition. And again, really congratulations to everyone for these outstanding presentations. And I believe we may be able to give the People's Choice Award. Is that correct? Lots of congratulations coming in on the chat, if folks can see that. Yes, congratulations to everyone.
Hey, Ronnie, we're actually going to go to the Center Ice Award with Peter Weebly.
Perfect. Thank you, Felicia. So The Center Ice Award is an award given from Center Ice, obviously. And Peter, would you like to present that award?
Yes, thank you, Ronnie. Great job, everybody. It's a great honor to be here this evening to present this award, and focuses in on the presentation that has focusing on innovation, entrepreneurial aspects, that is developing solutions or outcomes that can expand beyond the academic environment and become an opportunity to transition and be a useful tool for the community or for an industry or for a group outside UAF and maybe even outside Alaska. So if there are slides, thank you. Yes, so the winner for this is Murador Rashidin and his master's engineering thesis work with Srijan Angwal on his wastewater treatment work and his aeration experiments. And congratulations, Murador. There is a prize of $250 for you for that. And I'll be also probably connecting with you afterwards because we've got a few other programs that you and your advisor might be able to benefit from as a result of connecting to the Innovation Hub here at Center Ice. So congratulations, well done to all the presenters, and back to you, Ronnie.
Thank you, Peter, and congratulations, Murador, for winning the Alaska Center Ice Prize and the award of $250 that comes with that award. The Alumni Association Prize of $250 goes again to Kelsey Frazier. Congratulations, Kelsey. This was an award voted upon by the UAF Alumni Association and sponsored by the UAF Alumni Association. So congratulations, Kelsey, for winning the Alumni Association Prize. And then last but not least, of course, is the People's Choice Award voted by you, the people. And that award goes to Murador Rashidin. And that's a $250 prize, again, for your research into wastewater. So congratulations to our winners this afternoon. And congratulations again to all of our presenters this afternoon on these really tremendous presentations and all the work that you've done. Thank you to the Graduate School for coordinating this event, to the Speaking Center for helping our presenters develop and refine their presentations. Thank you to the thesis advisors and the faculty who've worked with our graduate students to develop their research. And of course, thank you to you all for joining us today. And we'll see you again next year.